storyteller is a good friend of mine. Beth, have you eaten up next? You want to go next?
I don't need it.
You want to wait?
Yeah.
Can we switch? Who's up after Beth? Kathy, where's Kathy? Kathy, are you ready? Sure. I love that. Come on up.
After that, it's split cord. But, yes, I came back from the goat farm, and I realized I needed a real job. And I actually got the first one I applied for. You know, it's amazing. It's a completely different world out there right now. I know people are at 18% unemployment. But back then in the 70s, if you breathed, you could get a job. I got a great job. I was an assistant magazine editor. Yeah, the assistant was there, but, you know, other than goat farming, I had, you know, nothing on my resume. I worked in the 12th floor of the Sacramento high-rise. I overlooked the cathedral, the Capitol. They paid me what seemed to me an ungodly amount of money because I'd been living on $4,000 a year at Sac State. And I promptly spent all of my money at Ramsel-Haas buying very expensive clothes, strappy shoes. And I spent every lunch hour admiring myself in the plate glass mirrors down there, thinking how utterly darling I was. But after 6 months, you know, the thrill of dressing up kind of wore off. And I started thinking, these people own me. They want me there at 8 o'clock in the morning. I can't leave until 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And then I started looking at the employee manual, and I realized that after an entire year, I would be rewarded with 1 week's paid vacation. And you got to remember, okay, so there's a lot of young people in the audience. In the 70s, when we went to college, that simply means that you signed up for classes, which you may or may not have gone to, because none of the professors ever took roll because they were all high anyway. And, you know, I remember kind of going to classes 2 or 3 times a week, always signing up for them afternoon. You know, so it was a real culture shock to be in a real grown-up job. So, the last 6 months of my job, I saved every single dime. And I entered into negotiations with the employer for an extended leave of absence. I was totally willing to take that unpaid. And they were really inflexible. You know, they were saying, well, no, you can't just, like, leave and then come back when you feel like it. So, you know, as a lot of 70s chicks at that point, I thought, what would Janice do? And I quit. Who needs it? Well, I had this nice little wad of cash. The 20 grand was gone. And I thought, well, okay. So, trip, vacation, have an adventure. And so I thought of the most exotic location I could think of, which was, well, actually Africa, but I ended up with India. India's religious, and so it's safe, and you can travel alone there, and people don't kill you. And I asked around, asked some friends, and they were all either paying off student loans or still living in the dorms off their parents' money, and so they couldn't come. And I thought, well, if I write the great American novel while I'm on my trip, I can come back, I can sell it, I can turn it into a movie, I will never have to work a real job again. So that was the plan. Go to India, one-way ticket, just kind of hang out, write my novel, and have an adventure. You know, the first month was fantastic. I went to Taj Mahal, saw it at moonlight by rickshaw, went to some national forests. I remember seeing hyenas trampling across. It was just like Lion King. It was exactly. And rode elephants across rivers. I lived in a treehouse for a couple weeks. Saw rhinos underneath mating. Okay, that's like a long process, you know. But anyway, I finally found myself, I thought, well, you know, I haven't been up in the mountains. I'll go up in the mountains. The Himalayas are here. They're important, right? People have heard of the Himalayas. And I went up to the mountains. It was a beautiful little town. It had apple orchards all around. Just think Tahoe in India, I think. And I met a young man there, very handsome. He actually worked for the Indian government. He was a professional mountain climber. And So Singh and I kind of hung out a little bit, and I said, you know what? I keep seeing these cool people in town. They wore long maroon coats. The ladies had dark black braids going all the way down to their butts. They wore ivory necklaces. They were gorgeous. Their shoes had 5 inches of insulation on the bottom of them, and they curled up like real elf shoes. And so all I could think of is, I want to go where these people live. And Singh said, well, you know what? You're right at the international border. Okay, so nobody goes up there. I mean, you're going straight up into the mountains. Mongolia's up there. So, totally cool. I bought a plane ticket for India, and I get to go to Mongolia. So he said, well, the only way up there is supply trucks. There's no public transportation. I said, well, Singh was totally, he was like being like reasonable, right? So I ditched him, and I found the supply truck people, and I said, can I get a ride up there with you? And they said, sure, be here at 6 o'clock in the morning. Now, this is all taking place in Hindi, and I'm like pretty proud of my Hindi at this point. I've actually thrown away the phrase book. 6 a.m. in the morning, I am there. The supply trucks guy are there. They're inviting me into their truck, and I feel this hand on my shoulder, and Singh is standing right next to me. And he said, you know what? I knew you were going to be stupid enough to do this. So if you're going to go, I guess I'm going to go with you. And I said, right. Well, it's a big, giant supply truck, and so there's room enough in the cab for all 4 of us. So we all squeeze in, head straight up the mountain. Okay, now, I'm wearing a really thick down jacket, and gloves, and boots, and I'm freezing. But we head up there, and we get to a summit. There's prayer flags fluttering in the breeze, and Singh explains to me how you can write your prayers on pieces of rags and then tie them up, and they fly to heaven. And we stopped for lunch at a lady's house. The house is just kind of on the side of a mountain. And she brings out 1 plate of food, and the 4 of us share dal and goat meat stew, I suppose it would be. We're all eating with our fingers out of the same plate, and I'm thinking, this is so congenial. I just feel one with these people. And towards the afternoon, we made a happy hour stop, I guess you would call it. It's the side of a mountain. There's a beam across and 2 very rough kind of pillars going straight into the mountain. I'm going, okay. And we get in there, and it's huge, humongous. It's cavernous. It's like Karen Allen's bar in Temple of Doom, if you remember where she was drinking the shots. It's just exactly like that. So the whole place is dark except for these kerosene lanterns. And there's a row of kind of Mongolian-looking men at the bar drinking. Well, they would only serve me tea, and I think I was lucky to get that. But I was in luck because the drivers took a couple of bottles back to the truck, and so as we continued driving, we passed the bottle around. Actually, I only took 1 drink because I'm sure it was pure kerosene. I really started crying when I drank this. But I wanted to show, once again, that I was a good sport. We stopped driving at about 10 o'clock at night, and I realized that, we weren't going to be stopping at a hotel or anything. I really wasn't expecting that. 23, roll with anything. But things kind of got ominous at that point. The men who had now been steadily drinking for about 4 hours went to the back of the truck, got out some coffee cans, stuffed them with gasoline-soaked rags, set them on fire, and that was the source of warmth for the night. We're now at probably about 16,000 feet. And so I got out to kind of sit around the campfire thinking maybe they had true stories, in Mongolia, and I was ready to step up. But they started arguing with Singh. Now, my Hindi wasn't good enough to keep up with that, but I definitely could tell it was about me. So I just kind of slunk back to the cab, and the arguing continued, and then Singh came back and he said, you need to stay in here. I just told them that you belong to me, and I'm hoping they respect that, but don't let anybody in. So So I immediately looked around for some locks. No locks. So I thought, okay, I'll just have to stay awake all night. And Singh ended up staying outside. I said, come on, stay in here with me. And he said, no, the cold will keep me awake. So he actually kind of took up a post on the passenger side. And I was holding on to the driver's side door, fell asleep, and sure enough, at some point, that door was ripped from my hand, and the driver was coming into the truck. Well, I felt around on the seat, and I found one of those empty bottles, and I hit the guy as hard as I could. And he fell back, and Singh jumped into the truck. I said, shut the door, and somehow we survived until dawn, let the drivers back in. They drove us down the mountain. Nothing was said at all. And I got out of that truck and I walked back to my hotel and I took a hot shower. And I thought, okay, that was a little scary. You know, why do we take risks? So we could prove that we have metal. Thank you.
Like we call that story something that your mother doesn't know. Yeah. Mom, I'm going on a little trip. I'll be fine, right? Yeah. Scary, scary stuff.